Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the 21st Century Underground podcast. As you can see, we are back home, back in the studio where we are most comfortable in our space here with the aggressive lighting. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about homages and otherwise tributes in all forms. I mean, we're going to be talking about literature, music, film, and we're going to discuss kind of like what that is, like when it works and then when it doesn't quite work. You know what I mean? When you're, I don't know, I guess too carried away with your influences. There's a difference between sort of appreciating what's come before you and feeling influenced by it, because you basically have to. I mean, you don't really generate anything unless you don't engage in kind of like a dialogue with what's come before you, I guess, and feel that kind of, but you develop passion for the medium by seeing it in action, and so that's a natural part of it. But at the same time, you can become trapped inside of your influences. I think we've all seen that and even experienced that at times. So we're going to be talking about that today. And I am Salvatore Arnaldo. I am the writer of the group, as always, and then with me,
hey guys, Brandon Salas, filmmaker.
I'm Mike Villarreal, the audio guy.
the audio guy. Cool. All right.
Producer.
Yeah, the audio producer. So yeah, we're here again in the studio, in the garage, bringing to you another thrilling installment of our show. And before we begin into today's topic, before we get into homages, I kind of wanted to ask, just kind of go around, because like the whole thing, like the whole point of this is I want you guys to kind of like have like an inside look on the process and kind of like what we're doing and kind of the journey that we're going through, because I think it can kind of help, I don't know, affirm, I don't know, other independent artists out there, and it kind of, I don't know, maybe give you some ideas or some inspiration. So I just want to ask all of us what we're up to so far. Brandon has had some very interesting developments of late, like as far as what he's doing with film. So if you want to get into that a little bit and explain where you were yesterday and why you slept for like 13 hours today, why that happened.
Just yesterday, I was over in Prescott. Basically, I've been going back and forth from Prescott for the past 2 weeks now. I am one of the cinematographers for it. It's me and this other guy, Jason Ryan. And it's a 7-episode TV show that's being shot over there in mostly Prescott, a little bit of Phoenix, but for most part, it's Prescott. And it's like a best way to describe it. It's called Horse Camp. You can find it on Facebook and mostly Facebook. You can find it through the hashtag on Instagram, hashtag Horse Camp TV. And it's basically a sort of, if you took Wet Hot American Summer, it's like literally took that and put it in like more of this country western setting, and it's about these sort of counselors and people who run this horse camp where people like kids come and they learn how to ride horses and do that kind of thing and do ranch hand type work. So, but very much in that vein of Wet Hot American Summer, where it's just like all this really goofy comedy and antics they get into, and it does have some slight abstract elements that gets to in the later episodes.
Oh,
so
that's
nice.
Cool. It's nice when horseback riding can be nice and fun. Because the Manson family also gave horseback riding lessons.
Oh,
no. So it's not always nice. So it's nice when we can be happy and it doesn't lead to murders.
Where you guys are filming on Prescott, for those who are not familiar with the area, north of Phoenix is Prescott, between Flagstaff, which is more known city, and Phoenix. And it's a little more chilly, a little more,
it's higher up in elevation, but
small town.
It's like high plain.
Yeah.
High plain.
So Phoenix, obviously desert, and then it just literally it goes from Phoenix. Especially if you don't know about Arizona, it's actually kind of interesting.
Actually, that's interesting. You should get into that,
because it goes from Phoenix and then it's a climb nonstop up to Flagstaff, and it literally we cover so many different ecosystems because of that.
Yeah, it's people think of Arizona and they just sort of think of the Wild West and like Tombstone and like desert and heat.
Yeah,
but we have a wide variety.
We get
of
snow. People
here.
Ski in Arizona.
Yeah. They do. Yeah, for sure. It's very fucking
Towards
weird.
the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
Snowflake, Arizona, where the very famous alien abduction apparently took place. So I'm just gonna drop another weird one in there.
But yeah, no, that's what I've been doing. Awesome. It's been a really cool process so far.
Cool.
I mean, I love it. I mean, I'm getting to be in charge of the lighting and camera and everything like that, and we're creating some really cool stuff. It's just been really fun, and it's something I love doing, and the team's been really great to work with, to be honest.
Also, and if you, speaking of which, if you check Brandon's Instagram, Samsara Studios, or in Brandon Vision, probably there's some set photos of his lighting, actually, for the show. It looks really good. Yeah.
As I can't wait to get further into it. Like I said, we're only 2 weeks in. We've only had, I think, a total of 8 production days so far, I believe. So I'll be heading back up there next week and being there from just off and on. So hopefully we're going to try really hard not to let that affect our schedule. That's what I've been doing. So
that's awesome.
How did you get into that? Just out of curiosity, like how did that?
I mean, I saw this thing on Facebook, and I literally just followed up with it. It was he's the director producer is called his name is Patrick Ball. he posted saying that he needs some DPs, cinematographers, and so I hit him up, and we had a really good phone conversation. But he was still like really deep in pre-production, so honestly, he like, hey, I really like you genuinely. I want you to be my guy, but you may not hear from me for like a few weeks, and I need just to take care of so many other things. I mean, he had a cast for a 7-episode show. He had to do casting, everything, get all the rest of the crew locked in, get locations locked in, no less. So, so sure enough, I didn't hear from him. So I literally kept on like every 2 weeks. I'm like, hey, you're still alive? Like,
right.
Is this still a thing? And he's like, yeah. I'll get to you. I'll get you. Don't worry. Thanks for following up.
Oh, and what exactly is it the role that he hired you for?
Well, yeah, I said that.
So. You said that earlier? Oh, fuck. I thought I was like
getting deeper into it.
Shit, I'm sorry. Okay.
We're
all very fried right now, by the way. I don't know. I should probably just play that on Front Street just for you at home.
You're like well done.
I'm well done. Yeah, I am. I'm really well done. Brandon's like medium. Yeah, because he's just got back from not sleeping in the desert. In the cold. This is the cold desert is where he is.
The cold desert.
He's in the desert where it gets like icy at night.
Yeah. But yeah, I literally just kept on following up, and then finally he was getting close, and he's like, "Hey, we actually need to get things locked in." He sent me a contract, and yeah, signed on. So
sweet, that's great.
Yeah. See, following up. Don't ever feel guilty about following up. And why? There's nothing to feel guilty about that. Yeah. If they say no, they're going to tell you no. That's all there is to it.
I'm glad it worked out.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
So, Mike.
And for me, I've been just creating music. I'm just kind of getting back into it, and I'm trying to make dance tunes and also whatever comes to me for the most part. And I got some new software, Keyscapes, by same people who make Atmosphere, people who know. And I'm still waiting on the mail, so I'm excited to get that. So just making music and kind of just trying to get influenced by other things.
Do you have anything that's been striking you so far that you've like a certain song or beat that you've been kind of into, or?
Well, I started off making dance tunes for the most part a while, like when I was first starting to make music, and it was mainly like a dubstep type of genre, and I'm trying to go back into that and just kind of like music that makes you excited, that gets you going. Something you listen to the gym, something you just kind of jam to in your car on your way or somewhere. And so I just kind of because that's kind of what I've been listening to lately. It's just like music that kind of gets you going and excited, and something you listen to while you're like playing some video games and stuff like that. That's kind of mainly the main point is like, when I took a hiatus, I was just playing like video games and just chilling, watching shows, and just kind of like catching up to the things I give up for like 2.5+ years, and a lot of that kind of been influencing back in to what I'm going to create next. So
that's cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's about it.
Yeah.
Anything you've been working on?
I've just been writing the same thing actually. Lately, I've been just doing a lot of work on that, doing a lot of research still, but just working on a book basically. And then me and Brandon have been talking like here and there, kicking around little shorts and things like that. I've been thinking about those. I wrote down a few ideas, but I haven't really started any scripts or anything yet. But yeah, mostly just working on a book. Yeah, just like everything I've been doing lately. I've been doing a couple, like maybe like 1,000 words every day, just kind of whether it's notes or like little vignettes from scenes. Like since I'm still just researching so heavily, like I haven't really, I've gotten into the meat of it honestly in different ways. Like I have big parts of it, not big parts of it, maybe like a chapter or two here and there kind of figured out, but like I'm just doing so much research, I'm just kind of giving myself license to just sort of accumulate, and then once all that is done, I'll just sit down and just start carving everything together and really thinking about how it's going to be structured and put together, you know what I mean? Like how I'm going to make sense of all of it. Right now, I'm just trying not to screen out or filter really much of anything. Like, I mean, obviously, if there is an idea that doesn't work at all for it, I'll like, be like, maybe that's not worth writing. But everything else, like I'm just writing everything basically, and then I'll just worry about sort of honing it when the time comes basically, because it's just like the kind of creative stage, and then I'll sculpt it later. You know what I mean? It's like you start with a block of marble, you know what I mean, with a big sculpture, and then you've got to carve it out. So that's kind of what I'm doing.
You have a blog, right?
I do. I have not updated it in a long time. I've been thinking. Honestly, I've been thinking about like almost rebranding it, maybe renaming it, and then kind of pushing it back out again. I don't know. It's been such a long time since I worked on it that like when I've been looking at it lately, you know, even just like my bios and the little write-ups on it, I'm like, man, this is not me. This is kind of, I was just trying too hard. You know what I mean? Maybe I should come back and reassess all this material. So I'm thinking about revamping the whole blog, actually, which is, you know, I guess that's kind of interest because that's kind of something I'm thinking about working on, too. I don't know if I'm going to rename it or not. I've been thinking about it. Most blogs, because, like, my blog is the Neon Codex. You know what I mean? I'm not sure if I'm going to stick with that or change, you know, because it seems like every blog has, like, some sort of name. It's never, like, just the person's, you know, name. Which is kind of more what I was leaning towards, but maybe I'll stick with it unless I come up with something better. But I don't know. We'll see. I do know that I kind of want to go through it and at least change the text and kind of like rethink what I was writing about. Maybe just because my interests have changed and I've changed a little bit in the years since, and then just kind of I don't know, because I was always trying to do I don't know. I feel like these posts that were like this big, long developments that were like a couple thousand words. You know what I mean? Like they were always kind of very, I don't know, like grand almost, at least in my head. And it was just, I don't know. It's like I could work in a way that's like more simple and even more creative than that, I think now. You know what I mean? It would just be more straightforward and direct. I don't know quite how to describe what I'm thinking about it. None of this really makes any sense, but I'm rethinking that and how I can kind of reapproach it and come back and kind of do something publicly again with that. So
cool.
All right, so with all that, now we're going to get into today's topic, which is homages in various forms of art. Specifically, literature, film, and music.
What's an homage?
Well, let me tell you. So an homage, it's kind of hard to like, I don't know, like the specific definition, if you look it up, is basically like, because, obviously we've been doing research, so look up the word homage. But yeah, no, it's like basically like you're paying public tribute is like, that's like the textbook definition. That's like what you would find in a dictionary. But in film specifically, or literature too, but you're essentially, what I feel like it is all art is sort of like a dialogue. And like I said earlier, like it's impossible not to be influenced, especially if you're passionate about what you do. And so you sort of, an homage is essentially just sort of signaling that influence. I feel like signaling and sort of, in a way, celebrating, paying tribute to something that came before you. So, like, for example, in, like Quentin Tarantino's films, he'll use, like in the opening of Jackie Brown is basically, it's the exact same shot as the opening credit sequence of The Graduate. And he's doing that consciously. He's not ripping off The Graduate and hoping nobody's going to notice. Like, the point is he's telegraphing. And it's a love for cinema. It's a love for the art form.
It can be controversial, where some people might think it's ripping
off.
Well, I
mean, Quentin Tarantino,
which
particularly,
we'll go over.
Ennio Morricone, who did the soundtrack to The Hateful Eight, said that publicly about Quentin Tarantino. It's like, yeah, I don't really like his movies. He just like recycles shit from other people's stuff, and that's like his entire movie. It's like a patchwork quilt of that. Basically, I'm paraphrasing him, but. Yeah, so and we'll get into
allegedly.
That. Yeah,
allegedly.
Yeah. We'll talk about both. We'll talk about when it works, when it doesn't work, because I think we've gotten to it's gotten to such a point of excess. There's almost like a toxic homaging that goes on. So so let's get into it. We're going to talk about first, as far as homages. Now that we've kind of given you, I mean, okay. So there's an example from. Let's do an example from each medium, maybe.
Sure.
How do you even homage in a book?
That's easy. In Ulysses, for example, like the entire book is basically, it's patterned after the Odyssey. It's like so it's called Ulysses because that's Odysseus' name, and I think it was like Latin or Roman. And so the entire book is basically, it's about a guy's single day in his life as he's going through Dublin, and he's going into all like these sort of adventures and stuff like that. But it's like sort of a very everyday occurrence type thing, but it's patterned after like the great sort of mythic, kind of bombastic episodes that you see in the Odyssey. But the whole idea is he's taking this like everyday person and saying that in an everyday sense he is almost like a mythical character. You know what I mean? There's like a mythical like gravitas to the things that he's doing, even though they seem mundane and unimportant. There's something heroic about this man just sort of like trying to make his way through life. You know what I mean? And it's sort of ironic and but it's like very much sort of like a celebration of like the. I'm probably butchering this, but of like the everyday man, you know what I mean? And so that's considered an homage. That's like an homage for sure, like a giant book-length homage to the Odyssey. You know,
Who wrote that?
James Joyce.
James Joyce.
Yeah. So
There you go.
yeah, so that's a good example. I mean, you see that a lot too. I mean, especially with people that James Joyce influenced, you see a hell of a lot of that. Especially with the postmodernists, it's almost like some of them again can be like a patchwork quilt of homages and influences, and they're like signaling, "Oh, I've read this," and I've, you know what I mean. There's like a lot of references to the point where some of them get kind of ridiculous. But it's like, you know, with like Thomas Pynchon and Gravity's Rainbow, and David Foster Wallace for sure, and Infinite Jest. You know what I mean? It's, you know what I mean. You see like a lot of, they're sampling from all like these different these novels that have come before them, and sort of, I don't know, recreating. They're doing their own thing with all of the influences, but there are a lot of like very clear, direct references to other works of literature. You know what I mean, and philosophy and what have you, depending on what the book is. So, you know, or actually, an example that we've seen on the show. Pape Solomon, the Man in the Red Turban. His first painting was an homage to the Man in the Red Turban.
Good example.
Yeah,
for an artist to put an homage.
Exactly. Yeah, he took because I was trying to think of an example like in the history of art. There are definitely a ton, you know. But I mean, like to bring it closer to home, yeah, Pape. He literally painted himself as the Man in the Red Turban. You know what I mean? Was doing a play. He was doing a twist on it, and it's actually that has every layer of it actually that we want to get into.
It's a self-portrait.
Yeah, he was doing a self-portrait because he was an African represented in this sort of like European Western style grandeur, you know? Yeah, exactly. And he kind of, so he appropriated that for his own purposes, but was also paying tribute to what was the artist's name? I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he was paying tribute to this.
I know he's a well-known guy.
He is. Yeah, his name is just escaping. It's just slipping my mind.
But
yeah, and that's a great example.
Yeah, you can check Pape Solomon at Pape Solomon on Instagram and papesolomon.com, Facebook. We'll link everything in the YouTube links, and for people listening to Spotify or in podcasts, check out our Instagram, and we have a show with Pape in it if you haven't listened to it already, and you can check out the links from that episode there too.
Exactly, but that would be a great jumping off point, especially. So I mean, Mike, I mean, okay, so we've talked about literature.
Film.
Well, yeah, okay, yeah.
Well, so we're not going like
go
we're going basically example right now. That's it.
Yeah, no, I think we should
example.
give examples. Yeah, because we're kind of like introducing it, and like we're trying to be, and then we're gonna kind of get into the positive. You know what I mean? Like when it works, when it's great.
A good recent example, I would say, was the movie that just came out, which is based off the book Doctor Sleep. I think we talked about it briefly in another episode.
We did, yeah, because you talked about Stephen King and The Shining.
Yeah. Basically, you didn't listen to the episode or you don't know Doctor Sleep. Doctor Sleep is a sequel to The Shining, and the book came out. It actually did pretty well. It's actually a pretty good book. I read it myself, and then they, of course, made a movie out of it. But what was cool and interesting about the movie was that, so if you know anything about The Shining, is the movie adaptation of The Shining, Stanley Kubrick, he kind of like took it and then kind of just ran with it in his own way.
Yeah.
There was a lot of almost like deliberate changes in very Stanley Kubrick-like way. We can talk about that for a while, but that's not the main point. The point is that Stephen King wasn't necessarily in love with how he ended the book. The ending is kind of drastically different, and some of the elements are pretty different. The book focuses a lot more on alcoholism than the movie does, and there's also much more of a ghostly elements. Ghostly? Right?
Supernatural. I would say in The Shining, the movie, you could almost argue that a lot of it is just very psychological, whereas in the book, it's like more blatantly supernatural, whereas in the movie, it's very kind of subdued.
There you go. That's a good way of putting it. So in the sequel, you can tell that the director,
Mike Flanagan.
Okay, it was Flanagan. I was like, it's Flanagan, right?
Mike Flanagan. Yeah. Just keep coming in.
Mike Flanagan, you can tell that he wanted to basically marry those two things. He wanted to be able to make a really good sequel that was true to the book, while at the same time not discrediting or pretending that the movie The Shining existed. And it actually did a really phenomenal job.
And just to put this out there, that should not have worked as well as it did
really
in that movie. He did a great job just synthesizing those two things.
And like he was able to really give honor to the book, be true to the book, while still taking the things that were different in the movie The Shining and still tributing it and very much homaging it in many times throughout the entire movie. It was actually really great. It's really worth watching. For whatever reason, it didn't get a lot of buzz, but as far as anybody I've known who watched it, no one was really disappointed. It's a really good movie, and the way it was done stylistically was really well done, and they kept more supernatural. A lot more times in Stephen King books, you do get a lot more supernatural elements, and the movie actually kept those supernatural elements, but it never felt corny or cheesy. It stayed kind of like that nice horror, and sometimes it doesn't always translate well. So,
Right.
Nice.
like,
Actually, Brandon, do you want to take a minute to... What about Southland Tales?
oh man,
I mean, there's that whole movie is just like, you know what I mean?
I'm glad you actually mentioned Southland Tales.
You're welcome.
That's a movie. It came out in, what was it? 2006.
Long time ago.
Directed by Richard Kelly. It was like his big his big next movie after Donnie Darko. And in the independent world and the alternative world, that he had a lot of hype because Donnie Darko was a big hit. Any angsty kid or teenager and above, really.
Basically, anybody who was a teenager between 2002 and like probably 2015 even. I mean, probably even still. I mean, it's probably still popular amongst high school kids. I wouldn't be surprised.
People latch onto it in a big way.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of hype for, okay, what's he going to make next? Like, that was a movie he made not that much money. Now he has money. He's got, what can he do? Sort of the follow-up of Uncut Gems to Good Time, if you will. So that movie's really interesting because very much in a sort of way of like Pulp Fiction or Quentin Tarantino flicks. It's a patchwork of these homages, like going through mythical routes, the Bible, all sorts of it's quite a beast. It really is. I really like the movie because I can see a lot, like when I'm watching it, I'm like, oh, I get it, I feel it, I'm seeing what he's trying to do.
The reason you like, I think, and this is a good like little parallel, I think the reason you like Southland Tales is the same reason I like Gravity's Rainbow. Like, it's very similar in just how zany, like you know what I mean, just the level of like, you know what I mean, like it's just so intricate and so no fucks were given as far as just like how he just like wasn't putting any, I don't know, because it was so intentional. It had to be that complex. But it's like he didn't give a fuck about the rules at the same time. You know,
it was ballsy. It was ballsy in every way. It was way too big of a movie for one movie. It needed more. Either it needed a way bigger budget, or it needed to be multiple movies. It's one of the few times I would ever say that, but it really did need to be multiple. It was so much so he actually while the movie was in post production, he started like overnight working on a graphic novel to release with it to help explain what the fuck's basically going on. Right. The pre stuff, because there's a lot of pre stuff that happens and you're like, what? And you have to kind of figure out in dialogue, but it's not exactly easy. But that movie was really interesting just because it's just a huge patchwork of. It's just trying to tackle so much. It's like Mother, but not necessarily done as well.
Well, didn't he had the woman who sang the Spanish version,
which
of
is David Lynch,
Crying. She did the Spanish version of Crying in Mulholland Drive, and then she was in Southland Tales singing again. Yeah, like doing that. Yeah, and it's just like all this stuff.
It's so many little things. It's layered.
The woman from Poltergeist with the weird voice, the tiny lady. Yeah.
And then the funny thing,
we should do a Southland Tales appreciation episode. Actually,
I would love
that'd be pretty good.
Just because it's, I looked it up online, and there's actually a podcast directly devoted to hating it. So this would be good.
Really?
Fuck those, dude. Like,
and that's what we wanted to avoid. I'm not naming names here.
And I don't even care. Like, fuck those guys. Like, and like, it just like it blows my. Even if you don't like it, like the idea that you would devote that much time, like you're just a dog with a fucking rat in its mouth, and you've got to, you know what I mean? Just fuck it.
And that's precisely what we want to avoid with our podcast. Was just we wanted to focus on the things that we liked, not necessarily just dogging on things that we didn't.
Sorry, guys, you're seeing me find this out live, and it's not even that like I need to watch the movie again because like I was like really ambivalent about it when Brandon showed it to me years ago, but I want to give it another chance. But just knowing that someone took like the things that I hate the most and some things I really dislike, like I can't, like I don't have the energy, you know what I mean? It's just so fucking, the internet is so fucking toxic. Anyway, go on.
But
fuck you, it's you.
My last note is, of course, also and a great note, Southland Tales has a crap ton of Moby all over it. So Moby did the soundtrack.
Yeah, yeah.
So
that's pretty good.
Sweet.
As we like to do here on 21st Century Underground, we have to give a nod to Moby.
Yeah,
That's just me.
This is our. I like how that. I want that to be a recurring thing in every episode.
I mean, we've almost practically been doing it.
Is it okay?
I don't think when we're talking
Except for the interviews.
Yeah.
There was a guy.
Hold on.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Is this getting too much off topic?
No, I was just gonna say in the Joe Rogan show, his old guy that used to be like his tech dude would just mention the Olive Garden in every episode, just being obnoxious. He was just like always like he would just say it sometimes, just like as they were signing off too. And I want the Moby to be our Olive Garden. I want to mention Moby in every episode.
But higher quality.
Yeah, higher quality than the Olive Garden fucking sucks. He was just trash, but yeah, the Moby's good.
Well, for music, it's a little. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of homages.
Homogenous.
Homages. And we had a little debate before we started this that covers are not necessarily homages. I think it depends on the artist's intention, especially if they use it on an album.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a couple of covers lined up, but I'm gonna go into more specific homages. But just to shout out some of those really good covers that could be homages, because I know these artists did pay tribute in some way or another, but recreated the song, but didn't really like in the sense of what you guys are using the word homage of kind of like putting tribute into specifically their own art. Some of these I got 3 of my most favorite covers. I'm gonna go with like old to newer, and Hurt by 9 Inch Nails was covered by Johnny Cash.
Yeah,
such a good cover.
Fuck yeah, it was.
And it's so good. Did he pay homage? I mean it's such a good song.
Yeah.
So I think he would. What are you gonna say? Something?
No, I was gonna say I actually have a good I have an entire album of bad examples for exactly what you're talking about right now. Because me and Brittany heard it in the car the other day, and I went on a rant. But yeah, go ahead.
Okay,
we'll get to that.
And then I know for sure Denzel Curry covered "Eye Against Eye" by the Bad Brains.
Oh,
and he's heard other covers before by other artists, and they feel like they didn't really pay enough homage to the artist, and so I think he was really trying to go 100% on it. And I think Spotify did this whole like video special thing with him, and you can hear the Denzel Curry "Eye Against Eye" cover. It's really good, really. And "Doing Time" by Sublime, covered by Lana Del Rey in her latest album, Rocky
Jaswell or something.
No, Norman
Rockwell.
Norman fucking Norman.
Norman fucking Rockwell.
Norman fucking Rockwell. I don't know why I was butchering that. And I think in her interview she goes off like her producer thought it would be a good idea to like put a cover in there, and she chose that. And she did a great song. It's fucking a radio hit. Like it's in the radio. Mm-hmm. And but to go more specific homages, there's a shit ton. When it comes to like music, a lot of people sample other artists and add it to their own music. And
do you remember that song a few years ago where Pitbull literally said "Fiesta Forever"? Like they just like literally got to a point where they were just taking choruses from songs and inserting them into their... Do you remember?
All night long.
Yeah, like they were like, well, there was that song from the 80s, yeah, "All Night Long," and then "Fiesta Forever." Yeah, and like, and then like,
was he sampling them?
No, he was just saying it like in the middle of his song. Like that was a big thing. Like
that's
the
lyrical sample.
The late 2000s, like early teens, there was like a
It's
lot
an
of
homage.
like... No, it is an homage. No,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, there were just like there was points
I'm
where
not
they were
saying
just...
it wasn't.
No, I was arguing with Salvatore.
What?
I don't know.
Oh no, but there was just a point I remember where they were like literally taking hooks from other songs, like classic songs from like the 80s and stuff, and just inserting them like in their music. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, this is so weird. Like mostly pop musicians, I feel like did that.
That'll be a lyrical homage, and there's like actual, for me, I can categorize the music for lyrically homages and actual music homage, and mostly most people do music homage. A shit ton of DJs sample music. I mean,
Yeah.
endless. And same thing with hip hop, endless sampling. And one of the most something I learned most recently, how Nina Simone was sampled a lot, and Kanye West loves to sample Nina Simone a lot. And I think she has like three songs that are like one of the most sampled in hip hop. Not the most, but one of the most. And same thing. A lot of people don't know this, but I know the song's La Di Da. That one's it's not called La Di Da, but it's something like that. And I'll remember in a second. But that's been sampled a lot. Miley Cyrus sampled it. And a lot of more early 90s rappers sampled it.
I just had a thought when you said Miley Cyrus. There's that whole thing with the Wrecking Ball, how it's like really tight in her face in the videos she's singing. That was totally an homage to Sinead O'Connor. Nothing Compares to You. Like there was a video homage. Yeah, so it kind of
I wonder
crossover
who
between.
directed it.
I don't know actually. And then Sinead O'Connor like shouted it out on Twitter and was like, "Thank you." And Miley Cyrus was like, "Yeah, you were totally an influence." And then Sinead O'Connor was giving her some advice about how like it's like record companies like don't care about you, like don't like she was. I think it started out pretty friendly. And she was like, yeah, like you're just sort of a product to them. So like, watch out for yourself and stuff. And Miley Cyrus was like, fuck you. You know what I mean? It turned into this whole thing. And she was like, from what I remember, she was like insulting her for having mental illness and stuff. And it went pretty ugly. This has been covered elsewhere at further length. So yeah, anyway, go ahead.
Allegedly.
Yeah. Allegedly. Yeah. We don't know for sure. Don't sue me.
So one of my most favorite songs of all time has a big sample in it, and it's in between of what if it's an homage or not. It really depends on the artist's intention, because it completely redid the song. You would have to absolutely have that song completely memorized to identify that song, which is Daft Punk's One More Time. And they
I didn't know that was one of your favorite songs.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite songs of all time.
Dude, I'm hot for you right now. All right, go on.
But they sampled Eddie Jones' More Spell on You. And if you listen to it, and then listen to that song and then listen to One More Time, you could kind of hear like, oh yeah, a little bit, but he broke down the song and sampled it that way. And where when you break down the song, they call it chopping it up, and then they put it in the keyboard, and then you can play key signatures to whether it be a snare sound or a violin, a piano,
like whatever the isolated sound is, basically.
Yep. So they did that. It's like dun, 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 dun. So you can barely tell, honestly. Like, I didn't know for the longest time it was sampled until like it was a thing on the internet, and then I discovered that, and I was like, okay. But a more well-known lyrically sampled artist, Jay-Z, likes to sample Biggie Smalls a lot.
Yeah,
and that's a bit controversial. There was a couple of YouTube videos where they're talking shit to Jay-Z, how like he constantly is using verses and like full-on bars in his music, and how like Jay-Z ain't much and he doesn't really come up with his own material, and he's sampling Biggie. But I think he's just paying homage to one of his favorite rappers, you know what I mean? Like, and so Jay-Z can fucking rap. Jay-Z can put out tunes. So, he's good.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's what I have.
But it's
for
like
all the good homages.
It's a natural thing, though. You know what I mean? You see that since the beginning of film, they were doing that almost. You know what I mean? Then you just see I don't know, like all this like kind of cross pollination, people referencing other things. You know, and Paul Schrader, speaking of him, described, you know, making a film is you're almost like selecting from the smorgasbord of pre-existing ingredients, like, you know, a little Bergman, a little, Truffaut or whatever, you know what I mean? And then you're making a new product with this mixture, you know what I mean? Like you're kind of making something original in as much as you can, you know what I mean? Do something new. But yeah, no, literature is very, very much like that too, for sure. You know what I mean? Like you see that, I don't know, down through the years, like, you know, things are kind of like drawing from like, you know, for example, even Don Quixote, it's almost like I was just reading about this the other day because when Don Quixote, I mean, it was almost like the reverse of an homage. It wasn't paying tribute. It was like a satire. Oh, I mean, it was a satire. Yeah, that's the reverse of an homage. But it was, there was all these like sort of popular chivalrous adventure stories with knights and like romances back in his time period in the 1600s. And he wrote Don Quixote as a direct parody because it's like this mentally infirm, like, you know, like this sort of like unbalanced individual who's like aged and he believes that he's a knight even though knights don't exist anymore, so he's jousting windmills and stuff like that. And he was using that as a send-up of that thing that everyone was reading, like this like sort of very popular kind of saccharine like entertainment thing, because he thought that like this is just infantilizing its readers, it's not teaching them anything, it's rotting their brain, you know what I mean? And he saw that like this popular entertainment that was kind of dispensable and people were just sort of sinking, you know, all these hours into it when they could kind of be doing something with like more, you know, meat in its bones. And the ironic thing about that too is barely anybody remembers the chivalric romances from his time period, and all they remember is Don Quixote, you know what I mean, by Cervantes. And then later, Salman Rushdie actually wrote another book. I can't remember exactly. It was like Quixote, or I can't remember what it was called, but it was literally a retelling of Don Quixote in the present era, and it deals with like reality TV and stuff like that. It was kind of interesting. So, but you see that a lot. Am I losing you guys here? I feel like I'm kind of just rambling. Yeah, but yeah, no, it's interesting. You see that a lot, and I feel like that same thing has happened over and over again throughout literature, and you just kind of see people using these old formulas and kind of like falling back. You know, like Ulysses, like that's a defining book of the 20th century, and it was based heavily off of the Odyssey. You know what I mean? And it almost was like this original thing in trying to kind of recreate this old thing in a new way. And it's basically what you do every time you make art. You try to find a new perspective on an old idea.
And it's funny because like some of the foundations, the formula of film, especially if you go through film school, they'll kind of a big pinpoint of where it all really came together. A lot of the basic rules, the basic framing techniques, all the putting someone in the strong part of the frame, like the standard, that came together in a big way from Rosebud.
Orson Welles.
What's the movie called?
Citizen Kane.
Citizen Kane.
Yeah.
Citizen Kane was like the first like real. Like,
and everyone hated it
at first.
Yeah.
But like now it's like technically every time you're using some of those standard rules, you're almost in a way continuously paying subconscious, like even though it's a subconscious act, you're always paying homage to that movie because it was the first creation of those techniques.
It's ironic the way people are influenced too, because I hear people
not creation, I guess, all together. I want my nerds coming after me here.
Down the road, you'll feel you'll hear like, you know, people who have like these original, unique voices who, you know, just seem like this like explosive force that came out of nowhere. And you realize that they were just so influenced by other people. Like I was reading about William S. Burroughs lately, and someone had made the comment. He's like so unique and wild and out there. But somebody was describing his early work as just basically being a carbon copy of like Dashiell Hammett, and I was like, I never fucking thought about that before. That's so weird. And it's like, I guess that's kind of true, but I don't know. Your perspective is always you are so you and they are so them that like even if you I don't know, almost rip something off and I mean not rip it off, but even if you think you're over influenced, you're still being so much yourself. Well, it's almost surprising. H.P. Lovecraft. In his like later journal entries or letters or whatever, he said, you know, I have my Poe stories and I have, you know, so on and so forth. I have these stories that have modeled after these other people, but where are my H.P. Lovecraft stories? And it's like, dude, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, that's so crazy. Like, he was so, like, you could pick you know, if you, you know, someone gave you, you know, a piece of his writing without the title, like, you could totally figure out who it is because it's so unique to him. It's like, oh my God.
Well, we're just trying to use the language that's been set out for us. And the only way you can, I mean, the way you learn is by watching, reading, listening.
It's essential,
and that's how you interpret it, and then how it comes back out of you.
Which is fascinating
that's
to me.
That's the basis of it.
Because that was a big struggle for me for a long time. I had like no self-confidence, so I was like leaning into these other writers. And it's like, oh, I want to be Kafka. I want to be, Pynchon. I want to be David Foster Wallace, whoever, And I would lean so hard into that influence, and it was toxic when you do it too much, because it becomes like this like game where you're like intentionally, consciously trying to recreate them to this extent that I feel like is unhealthy and kind of out of balance. And I was using that as my vocabulary, like, okay, so I can relate this back to David Foster Wallace, so I'll use it. So it's okay because he's approved it by, already creating that work. I mean, I feel like there's a fine line.
Yeah.
But yeah, I used to do that where I would just lean so hard into it that it was kind of crippling. But at the same time, I feel like if you can get into a place where you're okay drawing, because you have to be open. That's the whole thing about being an artist is like, it's like my influence is myself. Anyone who says that is full of shit, because it's like, oh, so what you're telling me is that you're too closed down to be open to the influence of other people and the environment around you. That's basically what you're saying. Like, you need to be open to be an artist. You need to be receptive. And if your influence is yourself and you just like to smell your own farts and shit like that, like you're not I don't know, you're not open enough. You're not absorbing. And so I think it's important to, to be able to unself-consciously draw from other people without clinging to them. You know what I mean? I think that's very important. We see a lot of clinging now. But before we get into that, I did want to mention, because this is the 21st Century Underground, and we want to give you an insight into our process and kind of like explain sort of our journey, and so you can see real sort of like art and creativity in action. Me and Brandon did an homage in our short film Paralyzed, a big homage that I was really excited about when I was writing it. We basically, and it's not like the same shot, but it's a very similar action. It like harkens back to it a lot. But we have a scene because we had a tree that had split from a lightning strike and fallen down in our backyard, and it was sitting there for a long time. So I wrote that into the movie. And the character is like living in this house, and his dad is crippled, and everything is kind of like the dishes are piling up, and the lawn is overgrowing, and everything's getting gross. The garbage bags are piling up outside the back door. And this tree has been sitting there forever, and it's just this symbol of the forces in his life that he can't, grapple with. You know what I mean? He doesn't know how to dispose of this tree. He doesn't have any real-world skills. He's been living in apartments and stuff, and then had to come back to this house after his father got sick. And so he goes outside with a saw and a plastic garbage bag and tries to deal with this tree, and it just eventually defeats him. You know what I mean? He's like literally wrestling with it, and that 100% is a strong homage to Ingmar Bergman's film Virgin Springs, because there's a scene, this guy's daughter is raped and murdered by these thugs, and he's gonna go out and he's gonna get revengeance. You know what I mean? It's a character played by Max von Sydow, and he's getting ready, and then he goes out, and then when he's on his way, he sees this tree just standing in the middle of a field, this very kind of like thin, tall tree, and he tries to literally wrestle it down and chop it out of the ground with his sword, and it's just this great shot of him just pulling it, and he's pulling against the forces of nature and the forces in the world that are out of his control. The fact that his daughter is dead, and he has to cope with that, and there's nothing he can do about it. He just can't defeat this tree. You know what I mean? And that was just striking, beautiful image to me that I literally just took it for our movie. You know what I mean? And he's trying to like pull this tree, and you know what I mean? He ends up just falling on his ass, our character. And there's something about that futility against nature that I just responded to so much that I was like, I want to use that in the movie. And I think it worked really well in our film. And the funny thing too is Virgin Springs was later remade by Wes Craven. This is another story. Remade basically by Wes Craven, his Last House on the Left. Last House on the Left is Virgin Springs.
That's funny.
Yeah, it's crazy. So
one more real world example with also my purpose with this one is to kind of show the range of homages, like the different reasons why you could do it. Like, yes, it's a nod and say that you appreciate something, but then you can use it in your storytelling to get different effects. So for instance, on Horse Camp, we have this horse camp.
Yeah.
plug.
Yeah, right.
There's a scene where it takes place inside of this bunkhouse, and this sort of ranch hand head, if you will, like the lead ranch hand, kicks down the door, walks in, and wakes everybody up. And so I decided
It's like Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah, I
yes.
decided to go Full Metal Jacket with it.
I know you.
And to like track with her and walk along the same exact framing of her walking along the bunk beds as they're all getting ready and everything.
Jesus Christ!
And she's just screaming at them.
Is one of them gonna get like fucked up with soap?
No,
I'm joking. Yeah, I'm kidding.
But
that's so good. Though.
I thought that's what I'm trying to do with the cinematography in this show is instead of just making it, well, it's more of a sitcom comedy. I've mentioned it before, just because it's a comedy or just because it's a a certain genre doesn't take that kind of thing as seriously does not mean you can't reinforce it with good cinematography to help still boost the story.
That pisses me off so much about comedies in general,
It's
because
killer.
it's like you see stuff like Edgar Wright, you see Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin. There's so much effort put into directing
Yeah.
the shit out of those movies, and it's like clear that it helps comedies, if nothing else. Like, I mean, you need that in comedy, you know, but it's like, you know, studios don't take it seriously at all, so they're just like, you know, with like Bridesmaids or like, you know what I mean? Like this, I mean, Bridesmaids isn't even a bad movie, but it's just the way it's directed is like so simple and by the books, and you see it like with a lot of comedies that come out now, and it's just like, why not do something with the camera and make it funnier?
So that was my little thing. Just try to add humor to it, not necessarily saying, "Hey, this is Full Metal Jacket." It's funny because it's kind of like that. You know?
Yeah,
So
very good, Brandon.
I like that.
No, I like that a lot.
what's our next agenda?
Our next
Toxic.
agenda, we're going to talk about the toxic.
Fucking
the toxic. Because that is a real fucking thing. And I think we really, if we're going to talk about homages,
Toxic homages.
we need to, toxic homages. Homages.
I have a nasty homage right now.
I have a nasty toxic homage. It's built up. There's fluid. It's swollen. But yeah, no, it's like, I think that's really important. That's a big part of this topic, you know, because people are like, you know, everybody, homages are like common currency nowadays, like, and like, you know, because like Netflix is so huge, and you know what I mean, like everyone's like trying to kind of trade in nostalgia, particularly
In a way, our cinematic language has grown so much because it started off with like VHS. The introduction of the be able to buy a movie and rewatch a movie multiple times strengthened the general audience's sense of like language.
Yeah.
And you add that to music, literature, they can build this language. So now filmmakers today, people who are making things today, can use that.
Well, that's true, because they all saw it on home video.
Yeah.
It's so easily accessible. You don't have to go to a theater and like almost worship it. It's more disposable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
So
it's
it's
just
not like these
yeah,
references or homages are for the exclusive elite crowd of people who really love that item. It's like everybody gets it now. Everybody's in on it.
Yeah.
Like Stranger Things.
Stranger Things is a great example of it being good, but really towing the line in like a way where it's like almost, if it was just a couple degrees further in like the other direction, it's like, oh man, because it's like, it's a great show. I love it, but it's like really just an assemblage. Like I don't know, the nostalgia factor of it, and the fact that it's just like built from like, okay, John Carpenter's The Thing and Stephen King, and you know what I mean, all this stuff just kind of pulled, you know. It's original, and I think it works well, but it's like right on that line, I'm telling you, because like, you know, like for example, like in season 3, like the villain was basically like the Terminator if he was like a human KGB agent, like 100%. And it's just like, I don't know, it's doing what we were talking about with the homages earlier to like this extreme where it's like, what's the point? You know what I mean? Like, why are we even here if we're just like, you know, what would happen if Luke Skywalker fought the Predator? You know what I mean? And it's just kind of like in this, like, you know what I mean? And the examples where I think it does go over the line and goes really bad would be a great example is just all of the new Jurassic Park movies.
Yeah.
And I don't think Jurassic Park, like, I'm not like nostalgic for the original sequels because I didn't really like, I mean, the first one is the only one that I really like a lot. But the remix, it gets to this point where it's just like everything that I think is wrong with entertainment these days is just summed up in those movies where it's like,
Would those be homages?
Well, no. Okay, here. So not because it's a sequel that makes it an homage.
No.
Yeah, the Fallen Kingdom.
Fallen Kingdom and Jurassic World.
Well, if the Fallen Kingdom, the one that was really guilty of it.
Yeah.
Did you watch that one? Jurassic World.
I seen the Jurassic World.
So the second one came out.
I believe I've seen the
I
second
watched
one, too.
that one. I was keeping an open mind about it because I actually really love the first Jurassic Park a lot.
I love it. It's
That
good. It's a
one's-
great movie. Yeah.
I just love that. I think it's surprisingly well. I think we talked a little bit with Vic actually on the podcast.
It's a fucking amazing movie.
But there's a lot of they're trying to recreate moments continuously from Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
It's not like it's just a sequel or anything like
Because
that.
the point is they're cashing in
Yeah.
on your love for the original thing. So rather than doing something that's at that caliber, that's that quality, they're just trying to remind you of it over and over and over again. But what they end up doing is it's like you have this recreation of like a Spielberg type shot, but it's like soulless. Like there's no Spielberg behind it. There's no I don't know, like it just feels soulless. Like it just feels like a product.
It doesn't have
that they're
that
pushing
passion.
on you. Yeah.
It's doing it just because it's doing it for money, not because of a passion.
Oh, you've seen this? Yeah, we know you've seen this. We know you like this. Yeah, we get it. Here you go.
And
You know
all
what I mean?
the-
It's like that's all it is.
One
Yeah.
thing that did bug me is all the commercial plugs that was in it, like Samsung. And
Oh yeah, because that's what it is. That's like it's
Ford,
product placement.
Mercedes.
Well, okay, actually, yeah, no, you're right. Not only are the products in the movies product placement, but the very shots and scenes and the construction of the film itself is product placement. It's like the whole movie is an advertisement for how much you love Jurassic Park 1.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just it's masturbation. You know.
So that's a really good example of a really bad one.
Really bad.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that these days. You know, like the newer Star Wars movies, I don't have as big a problem. Like I like the first two. The third one, it's like ooh, but you know what I mean? It's definitely playing on that too, where it's like, you know, J.J. Abrams is just trying to recreate George Lucas's, you know what I mean? Like,
but again, I think it probably does help him that he does have a genuine love for it.
He does, yes,
so,
yes, precisely.
You get the sense it's not like it's recreating that feeling just because it's trying to get you. I think he's recreating that feeling because he literally just wants to feel it again.
Yeah, it's true. We all do.
I know, JJ. It's okay.
We got to move on. But yeah, no, and it's like, I don't know. You see a lot of that these days.
What
though,
about Marvel stuff?
Well, no, actually, I was gonna say there was a really good example of one. You remember that movie Passengers? With like Jennifer Lawrence and Chris Pratt, they were on the ship, and then they're the only ones who wake up.
Oh,
like there'll be a movie like that where they've got like the bartender, like the robotic bartender is clearly a reference to The Shining, but the movie is just a piece of shit. You know what I mean? It's like they put these little things in there, like it makes it better somehow, and it's like, oh, you like this? We know you like this, so you know what I mean? But it's like, but this movie's fucking horrible. You're telling me right now that you're aware of The Shining, like you've seen that movie, you know that it's good. And yet you fucking made this, and this is what you're trying to like sell to me. You know what I mean? It's just like that. It doesn't help your case.
It's not genuine.
Yeah.
And
no, not at all.
You're not being genuine with it. It falls apart. That's
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, because they're relying on it versus just being inspired by it.
Yes.
And making it their own.
Exactly. Yeah, it's rather than a love. It's like you recognize that other people love it, and you're just trying to sell it to them. Yeah.
It almost seems like it's when they make. Art, media, all that's a business, and it's when they lean too hard on the business,
right?
Not enough on the art.
Well, because we're living like it's like this like postmodern age. It's like this like self-referential. That's like the whole thing. You know what I mean? They're just recognizing that is selling very well right now.
It leans into this thing where it's like a genre flick, and by being a genre flick, it has to follow all these like rules that were preset by earlier movies instead of adding something new to the vernacular. Like,
it's like pure pattern recognition. It's like you see this thing and it's like, bing, I'm a machine. I like it. You know?
Unlike the Joker.
Yeah, the Joker. But the thing is, the Joker was full of homages too. Yeah,
but
100%. But they worked
bad.
because Todd Phillips loved those movies, like Taxi Driver. There were some elements from Light Sleeper in that movie, which was a Paul Schrader movie from the early '90s. There was a garbage strike like in that movie. King of Comedy, obviously. Like there was a lot. Sidney Lumet's films, Network, was in there. Like he recreated in some scenes like very similar shots. You know what I mean? Like there's the scene with when he's on the couch pretending he's on the talk show and he's practicing how he's going to kill himself. It's 100% like the scene from Taxi Driver when he's in the mirror, you know, pretending he's going to shoot somebody.
Well, what's some toxic ones in music?
Well, for the most famous one I can think about is it crossed the homage and went straight into ripoff when it went into court. Everyone knows this. Vanilla Ice, Ice Ice Baby, Under Pressure by Queen. And, you know, they lost the case very famously. And even though it wasn't exactly like how he says, and it wasn't a sampling either, but it was so similar, and he didn't pay. And when it comes to music, unlike film and stuff, you got to pay these copyrights if you're going to use the material from other artists, and if you don't do that, then you're going into legal issues. You're considered a ripoff more than you are sampling or paying homage to. And so he ripped off that song, and even though it did well, and I believe he saw no money after that court.
How much originality do you see in music these days? Because with film, like there's obviously we're in this situation that me and Brandon were just talking about, where it's like very like about nostalgia and.
Well, I mean. Similarly, like it kind of leans all over the place. There's always sparks of new and different. It's like here and there
with like the like synthwave and stuff like that. You know, it's like this like play on stuff that was going on in the '80s on like movie soundtracks.
I feel like a lot of what happens in our media world when it comes to film and shows and stuff kind of tie into music too, because. Like Stranger Things had such an 80s like synth soundtrack and intro, and '80s theme of attire, and the whole thing was based off like that world. And I've been seeing more of that '80s style synth music kind of popping out in more in the EDM world, and in the pop world, you know, using some of the good '80s synths out there. And snares, those famous.
I thought you were going to say
it kind of goes
good
both.
Eddie Grants.
Well, I was going to say it kind of goes both ways, because like even with I guess sometimes in literature too, and then in the case of music particularly, you see people trying to harken back to a previous time period and recreate something, and in doing that, they end up creating something that was better than what they're feeling nostalgic for in the first place. You know what I mean?
And that's when it's good. Yeah, that's when it's good, because it kind of ties into fashion too. Because fashion is like, oh, the '80s are back, or how they say, oh, the '70s are back.
Yeah.
'90s is, you know how they say that in fashion. It's like similar. It's they're paying homage. They're being inspired to what's been already done and making it their own. And it kind of comes back and forth, and to what time period, to specifically what genre you're listening to. If you're listening to EDM, would be the general term to dance music, not going into detail of all the other genres under it. It leans towards, from what I've been hearing lately, a slight either very out there and trying to be new, with all these new technologies and synthesizers that are being created, to a slight 80s feel, and kind of have like a disco resemblance, like
There's a new
Chemical
one that
Brothers.
a really new one had a really strong disco element. What was I listening to? It was on the radio. I can't remember.
A really good one, a good example that kind of grabs from both. A really good artist, the Chemical Brothers, really good DJs. They just recently won a Grammy for one of their songs, 2 Grammys.
It's been around for a while, right?
Yeah, been around.
A long while. I mean, I grew up with them. When I first got into, like, quote unquote, what I used to call techno, when it's technically not techno.
Electronic music.
Electronic music is the
easiest over branching.
Yeah, because there's so many genres. But when I was listening to them, like growing up and then seeing them now, I'm just like, I was just so blown away how they're still making music and stuff. But I feel like what's
sorry.
I forgot the name of the album. It's their latest album, came out 2019. But they won a Grammy, and for album, like best dance album, or I forgot what it's called. A friend of mine kind of brought me to attention, Julio. He's very into that scene and world. Shout out to Julio at Cine de Copelli. He's a photographer. Check him out. He's in the downtown dance scene, taking lots of photos to DJs. He brought that to my attention, and but that it's a really good example of they had a lot of kind of 80s synth elements, but also creating something completely new and different. It's just like ever evolving, just inspired by the sounds, but creating something completely different. You know what I'm saying? And for hip hop, I feel like people are still in the trap world right now. It's just like very trap, and a few artists kind of grab from here and there, but it's mostly in sampling. It's where they pay homages and to the music and stuff. But like, there's endless types of samples out there. All right, I had a quick second to look it up. Because every time we start recording, I always blank on everything. But they won a best dance recording for "Got to Keep On" the album No Geography, and also won best dance / electronic album on the same album, No Geography. It's a really good.
I need to listen to more. I only have a couple songs I really listen to. But I haven't listened to a lot.
Like,
I know they're good. Yeah. And they follow under the if you like Moby, you'll like.
Yeah.
I have no reason not to have checked.
Why you been hitting skip or something?
Well, I did on Pandora.
He's like, I want to listen to more Moby. What the fuck is going on here? Why are these guys on?
for literature, sorry.
Yeah, the thing that I've noticed like lately, as far as like, because I think, I don't know, it feels like almost like in some aspects, I mean, not all of it. There's some really good stuff that comes out, but it's like in some aspects, it feels like some of the literature is just like really stagnating right now. I don't know if it's like just sort of a confusion. Like I don't know. I don't know. In a lot of ways, I feel like literature really needs some like new life breathed into it, because it just, I don't know. It seems, I mean, in one sense, like there's a lot of like really interesting new stuff going on, because at the same time you have a lot of different voices are getting heard now. So like you have like, you know, people of color and women and more LGBT stuff. But at the same time, I feel like in the mainstream, it's like, I don't know, there's a little bit of stagnation. And I feel like when I read the stuff that I don't like, and I don't know what it is, it feels like it's always like sort of an author between the ages of like 25 and 35 who went to like the MFA program and and was like sort of like going to school to be an author. Like they were trying to go to school to be a novelist, you know what I mean? And there's not really a way to do that. But yeah, they were like in the MFA program, and they're going to kind of like fall back on teaching or something. I don't know if that's a coincidence or what, but actually that might be very related, because my criticism is their stuff feels overly formal to the point that it's almost insecure, you know what I mean? And so they're like falling back on like these old structures and like this very clipped, kind of overly manicured style of writing, where it's like not economic because it can be, it's economic because it needs to be, because they're afraid to fully kind of begin expressing themselves. I see that in a lot of modern novels lately when I'll pick up, and I don't read like a ton of them, but I mean the things that I have read, I'm kind of like, oh god, like I'll pick it up and just kind of start reading it, and it's like just, it feels so stilted, you know what I mean, where it's like you're not like a great writer, but you're trying very hard to present yourself as though you are. You know what I mean? It's just like very insecure writing. You know, I remember Charles Bukowski had this quote that when the spirit wanes, the form appears. And like the idea being that like the less inspired and passionate you are creatively, the more and more formal and rigid you'll become. You know what I mean? Because you're trying to desperately to sort of control your output. You know what I mean? It's like kind of like fascism, actually. It's the less secure a society. No, I mean really, the less secure. No, it's the same thing. The less secure.
I really relate to that. Yeah. And then you said that, I was like,
no. I'm saying on an individual level, it's the same thing. The more insecure you feel, the more rigid you will become. On a social level, it's the same thing. When a society becomes more and more insecure, more frightened, more chaotic and in disarray, they'll begin turning to more extreme politics,
extreme control.
As a way to control.
I get you now. Because I feel like that comes off my music too. When I feel insecure about it, I'm like, I really want to structure everything down, and it just sounds robotic.
Exactly, it does. And I've done that before too, where I'm just clipping everything very, you know what I mean. And I'm glad I'm not now, but it's like, and I see that in a lot of writing these days, and it's like, and actually, you know, that makes sense. Yeah, no, people going to the MFA program and going to no, really, and like going to school and getting like, you know, just going through all these years of education to be a novelist, which is like a very creative, subjective, difficult field to get into, that there's no right way to do it. But it's like you're clinging to sort of the academic institution to try to train you to do this thing that you want to do, which is in itself very, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like very kind of expressive and abstract, and you can't really capture it in a definite way. So maybe that's why the writing kind of sucks. But my point being, I don't know that it's even really falls under the line of homage. That's just the problem I have with a lot of literature I see lately. But I guess in some ways it's like trying to sort of pay tribute to the clippy, very economic writing of like minimalism that maybe was popular in like the past like 20, 30 years. You know what I mean? Some of those writers are really good though. But I don't know. Maybe it's kind of trying to harken back to that, because they just like, there's no other... They don't know what else to do. You know what I mean? You know, so that's my problem with literature. Maybe it's the same. It carries over into film too, because, you know, everything's just sort of a product now. You know what I mean? So it's like very safe, and this is something that you recognize, and I'm trying to sell this to you. It fits the formula. You know what I mean? Because we don't want to rock the boat because we need to make money. You know? So I don't know. Maybe it does relate. I don't know. I just kind of went off on my own tangent there, so we're gonna accept that. But you know, so
makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty much.
See you guys later. No, I'm kidding.
I mean, I think the thing is, it's appreciating homages. It's acknowledging that you can do it. You can have fun with it. There's good ways of using it, but it's just about, I think, being genuine, doing it because you're passionate about what you're saying. Like you're not doing it for the sake of doing it. You're not doing it so. You're not doing it for the gram. You're doing it because you think, man, I really like this. I really feel like this relates to it. It'll power what I'm trying to create. empower what I'm trying to create.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
the reason you get so absorbed in that stuff is because you love it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like that love has to be there. It can't be a shield. You know. So
I think don't take this as a way to just homage like crazy, but also don't find balance in it.
Of course.
yeah.
And
You've got to be able to unself-consciously
Don't rip
be
people
open
off.
to things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean-
yeah. Don't try to just construct these. That's what happens when you're insecure. It's like, I don't believe in my own talent, so I'm just going to try to assemble something from these different places. Be open to influence. You know what I mean? You got to just absorb everything, and that means everything. You know what I mean? Read stuff. You know, even if it doesn't sound cool. You know what I mean? Like, you know, when you like, you know, you
so are you
think
gonna read
yeah.
Are you gonna read newer books then?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't know if I have the energy. But, you know, it's like, you know, just like kind of, I don't know. You've got to just sort of like unself-consciously absorb. And that's the thing is like, I don't purpose. I mean, there's a couple like I got on my list that I want to read soon, but it's like, just follow your inspiration. You know what I mean? I don't know, manicure it, I guess, so closely. I don't know. I lost my train of thought, but yeah.
I think like for the most part, like be inspired, of course,
And be sure to do this. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
and like obviously don't copy paste. For the musicians out there who are gonna sample music, you know, that's totally cool. It's within our right, but now you got to pay the copyrights if you want trying to sell that. So don't forget to Google how to fucking do that before you put it on Spotify or whatever or YouTube, and then, you know, try to monetize on it. You know, you'll be bitten in the butt. That's the whole copyright thing with YouTube is super solid right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a good podcast. We'll come back next week. I think we're gonna hopefully we want to talk about comedy. There's a lot of ideas we want to talk about.
We got a lot of things in the works. As they say.
But I guess for now, I mean, we're signing off. I'm Brandon Salas. You can find me at the Samsara Studios.
And I'm Salvatore Naldo. You can find me at the Neon Codex.
I'm Mike Villarreal. You can find me at Mike Vivace, spelled MikeVivace on Instagram. Thank you.
Be sure to follow us on our Instagram for the podcast at 21st Century Underground, and then also on Facebook, the 21st Century Underground Podcast. And we will, as always, be back next week with a new episode, whatever it happens to be. Thank you for joining us and being patient with us.
Follow, share.
Follow, share, subscribe, do all that shit.
Yeah, do all those things.
And whatever happens first. Yeah. And we will see you guys later. Hopefully.
And tell us your favorite homages in the comments.
But
If
engage.
you don't, I'll kill myself.